truest reality, our ultimate reality of who we are as people, operate in our multiple dimensions as people, is more. We're more similar to how music operates than how English or Spanish operates.
Hi, and welcome to the Storia podcast where storytellers disrupt. I'm David Noronha.
And I'm Fabiano Altamura.
Before we dive in, please remember to give us that 5-star review, like, and subscribe. Brother, who do we have on today?
Why were you laughing when I said Fabiano Altamura?
Because you've always got a different version of it.
Fabiano. We have Antonio Marin and Dr. Allison Marin today. We're so honored to have these guys here. They've literally just got an hour ago off a flight from Brazil, where you've been gigging in Brazil, which is amazing. And these guys are some of the most well-traveled, well-known people in not just the Christian space, but secular as well, right? You flipping play on virtually every single album worldwide, I think. And we're so honored to have you because we know your schedule is so crazy, but we are colleagues, friends. Antonio is the director of BETHEL Music College. Dr. Allison is chief of staff at BETHEL Church, and they are just super intelligent, very business savvy, and just amazing creative. So thank you so much for being here, guys.
We're so excited to be here. Thanks.
We're going to be doing a two-parter with you guys. First, we want to explore a bit of your musical career, and then because you are so traveled, so busy, both creatively and whatnot, we also want to explore just how you balance that in your relationship. So we're going to have a two-parter with these guys. But today, we're going to dive into your musical career. So Antonio, tell us a little bit about how you fell in love with music, and maybe even specifically the cello itself.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having us. It's an honor to be here. And we just have so much appreciation for what you guys are doing. You guys are both such genius people, and just not just extremely brilliant, but also just very kind-hearted and absolutely a joy to be around. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate
a pleasure. But to respond to your question, I think for me, it started with my dad. He's a musician as well. He played. So ever since I'm a kid, I've been, hearing he play the violin, the guitar, the flute. I mean, he could just play anything that he could get his hands on. And so I remember as a child just hearing him play. It's been the constant thing in my family,
It's like the score of your life, right?
Exactly. So I would just go sit with him, and he would just pull out his instrument and we just start playing and he just, since I'm a kid, he would just, come here, let me show you kind of how this goes. Some people ask me, when did you start learning how to play the instrument? I'm like, I don't remember a time that I was not around the stringed instruments. And so it just became sort of naturally just became a language.
What was the first instrument that you remember touching that you began to try to learn?
It was my dad's violin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was my dad's violin.
They gave you a violin the day you were born.
Yeah. Well, actually, the story is the day I was born, my dad went and bought a violin. And that violin later down, when it was a full-size violin, later down when it became the instrument that I could play, he just gave it to me. And then along the way, I started playing the cello as well. I started playing the cello originally because my sister started playing the cello. And so then I was already, confident on the violin, and, I played the guitar as well and other instruments. And so I started coaching her.
Wow.
And by coaching her, I fell in love with the instrument. There's something about when you have to teach someone about an instrument and open it up for them, that it became such a language for me as well. And the more I played it, the more I realized, maybe I'm more of a cellist than a violinist.
Wow.
And then along the way, I've done a lot of work in both instruments, and violin and viola. I now have an upright bass that I play with the bow as well. We got our studio. We have over 25 instruments, just all the violins, the violas, cellos, the bass,
String family.
The string family.
and
Your babies. Yeah.
And Allison, what about you? How did you start in the violin?
Yeah, I love that question. I also grew up in a musical family.
Mm.
So it was high priority for my parents that all my siblings and I'm actually one of 6 kids.
Wow.
So
One of 7.
You're one of 7.
Good Lord. That's a big Christmas.
It's a big Christmas. Always had a friend to play with, which I appreciate.
Mm.
But they started as all on piano. They just really valued it, wanted to be part of, from the beginning to growing up, something that they invested in us. And so started me on the piano. And then a couple years in, they actually wanted me to go into a different instrument because my sister also, my older sister, played the piano at the time. And both my parents growing up, all of their siblings had done the piano and they experienced a lot of competition.
Rivalry.
And so sibling rivalry. And so they said, we don't want you guys to have to actually deal with that. So we want you to specialize in instruments, which I actually appreciate. I didn't mind at the time. I'm like, whatever. I was really little. But so they put me in violin lessons. And my mom actually started taking lessons at the same time, which is really special as a kid to be like, oh, my mom's going to try something new. She played piano. But to see her also be adventurous and try something new, it spurred me on because I remember going to my violin lessons and being like, oh man, this feels really scary, you know? Like I can sound really bad. Piano, at least I can push some notes, you know? Violin, I can sound really squeaky. And so by the time I was old enough to actually get to the point where I realized I had a decision whether I wanted to play or not. For some reason, it's just like something I just did. I was good enough that it was motivating. And I was, by the time I was probably 12 or 13, I remember being like, do I want to continue? I was already in university symphonies and playing in a capacity that it was very rewarding to me. And so that has only continued with being able to play with orchestras and in bands.
So I'm curious. I've got a 15-year-old who's noodling on the piano. He took a break for about a year. I thought he was not going to pick it back up, but as of late, I've seen him pick it back up, and he's playing the Mia song, the theme between the lovers or whatever. So he's playing that one, and he's got one by Chopin. What's interesting for me is, as a 15-year-old boy, it's not always easy for him to express his emotions. So Antonio, do you remember the first moment that you turned to your instrument to express something on the inside of you outside that you couldn't say with words?
Yes.
Such a great question.
I love that.
That is a good question.
There's a quote, I believe it's Victor Hugo, that says, music says that which cannot stay quiet, but does not fit into words. So all the things that we must say that you can't keep, it's no way you can't keep it quiet, but you just can't fit it into words. You turn to melodies, right? You turn to. I like to think of music as a heavenly language. You know, in Pentecostal Christian circles, this was called speaking in tongues, right? Speaking in heavenly language. I like to think of music, melodies, as such, as a heavenly tongue, right? There's a verse that I love that says, the Holy Spirit intercedes for us with groanings, with sounds too deep for words.
Wow.
So if I look at the Bible and I kind of look what writers like Victor Hugo have said, he's like, they're kind of all tapping on the same thing. That there are things that you cannot fit into words, but you must say. And for me, that started, I believe as a kid, just because I saw it on my dad. He just come from work or whatever, and I just had a one of those days, a case of Mondays or something, and he would just go out and just go pick up his instrument, right? And so
what did you feel coming out of your father, that he was almost in a way like exercising, getting out instead of venting? Your father turned to music. What was he getting out of him?
That's an excellent question. I think it depends of the day, depends of the moment. But there's deep conversations, deep tension and release that we experience, deep stories. It's like the music is it's a story, right? It has a tension and that release, and it's like everything in nature is that way. Hunger. You're hungry, you go eat and you calm your hunger. So there's desires, there's frustration, there's anger, there's joy, there's even beyond those emotions. It's almost like music has the ability to metaphorically, if you will, to bring your heart to a depth, different layers of metaphors within melodies that you find yourself also like making a salad, if you will, of different emotions. And I like to say that music is a multi-dimensional language. It's a language, just like English, German, whatever else. It's a language. that you got to learn how to speak, but it's a language that contains multiple dimensions. So then when you speak it, you're not just tapping into a line, a straight line, a conceptual line. You're tapping more into a multidimensional line, which from my perspective is more like how heaven operates, how our truest reality, our ultimate reality of who we are as people operate in our multiple dimensions as people is more. We're more similar to how music operates than how English or Spanish operates. So for me, getting an instrument in my hands, I remember, as a kid, you begin to experience getting in tune, in touch with your own heart, with your own emotions, your own experience in life. Why am I not like that person? Why am I have to do this? Why this happening? Why am I, and then you just, as you begin to first interpret other people's music, other people's songs, composers that have taken time to write a song about this theme or that theme or this or that, and then you begin to interpret that. You find your voice on it. You find yourself in their emotion. That is sort of universal throughout history to all of us as humans. It's our story. It's our Storia, right? It's our, it's our story. And then as you begin to interpret this thing, all of a sudden you find yourself in the middle of it. Wow, I never knew that this was possible. I never knew I could experience that. But a composer wrote this song and you're interpreting it. All of a sudden, it opens up a world to you. Now, as you progress to that interpretation, you get to the point of sort of beginning to create your own sound within that, and maybe you start doing a variation out of a piece that you playing Ode to Joy.
And a lot of classical music, and a lot of people don't appreciate this. They were actually quite improvisational. I mean, we've set them now in stone, but there are whole passages of them that can be interpreted. Allison, do you find that in any violin pieces that you've been able to find this kind of improvisational side?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, they actually would come to the cadenza, the part of it, and that was all improv.
It's the riff.
Yes, exactly. And that they found, show off, right? Usually there was one person that they loved their version. That was what was passed down. So when I learned concertos, there was a version that I learned, but back in the day, and they didn't want you to actually go off of that. By the time they've reached nowadays, they're like, no, this is what you need to learn. But there was very much, it was a language.
Wow, even in classical, because I thought improvisation was mainly kind of found in jazz. That was so improvisational, and they came up with some beautiful things. I didn't realize that.
You have a whole,
it's amazing
variation.
It's evolved, it has evolved over the years. The classical music today is not what it was 300 years ago. It became sort of like any art form is always in the danger of becoming
a denomination.
Of the original thing, right? The revelation becomes it's like, it goes through all the metamorphoses until it's sort of like a monument to,
and then you control it.
Well, because it was even Bach, which we now look at as like so iconic. That was cutting edge of the day. That some churches didn't even necessarily want to let that in. It was so
and these guys were writing worship music. They were writing,
it was their
work.
Yeah, Bach, has so many quotes where he's saying that the purpose of music is to glorify God. I mean, it's like, and it's fascinating to think about it. I wonder how many worship songs of today will still be sung 500 years from now.
I know your love of Shakespeare, and it reminds me of how different actors have come to the piece of Hamlet. Bringing their interpretation of this classical.
Well, I think you've got to look at art as explorative, haven't you? Because I think nowadays, what we find with our students is about what is right and what is wrong. And you can't approach art from that point of view. A lot of art comes from the exploration of yourself, finding out who you are. Then, as you said, you put your slant on and your interpretation, your individuality on the piece.
Very true.
What I find very fascinating about you guys, you've been nominated for 5 Grammys. How many doves?
A whole flock.
A flock
of doves. But what I love is you're not the stereotypical creative. A lot of people would say that. I say this, but it's not typically true, because you have got to be very disciplined to be. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to be disciplined to be a creative, and people think they're not. They're like usually an Enneagram 4, very individual. Right. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. Let me do everything spontaneously, improvisationally, which isn't the case, because you've got to be structured.
You got to have the language. You got to you've got to know the language well to be able
Mhm.
to speak it in
There
an
you
improvisational
course.
manner.
Yeah.
Most people want to improvise without learning the language.
Right.
I want to improvise in German, but I have no clue how to speak
Know how to
German.
do- yeah.
You will not be able to improvise in German until you learn German.
You've got to learn the technique to forget the technique, so then you can be free in it.
Yeah.
But you guys are academics. Antonio, you've got a double master's. You have a PhD, and it's not in music.
Fun,
And then you're also in.
Now you're just flexing.
Yeah.
Now you're just
Now you're
Cover my
also
microphone.
you're academics, you're professors, but you're also business people. How did you discover?
That's part two. That's part two. You can't get into the personal yet. We got to stay in music.
Okay.
because
Well,
They
I'm not.
overlap so much.
They do overlap. My
Tell
goodness,
them about the business of music.
Yeah, the business of music. So how did you get into like the business side of things? Because you guys are constantly working.
How many dates? So Fab likes to tell me you're on the number that's been quoted is 150 albums a year. How close to the truth are we?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like,
Pretty
I mean,
close.
we are. Here's the way I look at it.
Look at how
Here's the way I look at
he's
it.
so chill about it. Anthony, don't be chill for a second. 150 albums a year. Is that true? Is that how often you guys are featured?
Well, how many words do you speak a year?
Oh, come on.
I mean, if you speak English, right?
Yeah.
And you love your language, you love English, and you must communicate. You have relationships that you communicate with, right? You don't put a number on it. You just speak it, and if you, I mean, you speak it out of necessity because you must speak it to communicate. To get around, right? But if you have discovered a taste for the power and the art, the beauty of the language, right? Yeah. Then you don't know, it's not just out of necessity speak it. You speak it out of pleasure.
Yeah.
You speak it out of joy, out of glory and beauty, out of exaltation of the one who gave it. It's it's just overflows. You can't help it, right? And so when it comes to, I don't necessarily think of the numbers, although it is like, well, I mean, we record several songs a day, so and we're just all the time in the studio. We have a home studio, so every day we're there. We're recording songs.
200 to 300 probably different.
Yeah, I mean
recordings, but some of that is songs, but some of that's the same.
And then there, if you think about records, it's like there are like sometimes you do an entire record, sometimes you do 3 songs in a record, sometimes one, sometimes it's like we'd have. Yeah, I mean it's definitely hundreds of.
So let me ask you a question, Allison. When you're asked to be on a track, what is your job? What do you see as your job on that track? What do you call being called to do when you're asked to be on a song?
I love that. I mean, I consider it a great honor and a gift to be able to add a sound. And part of my passion in playing music is about the sound, obviously. But it's the David who sat with Saul and was known for his sound that actually made demons flee. So I'm very passionate. We're very passionate about the power of sound and what it does. And it is funny because we're on a lot of different types of projects. And so some we're on it and we're so inspired. And it's like, we just want to sit and listen. Because sometimes we actually will just turn the track on. We don't want to hear it before. We want to see what actually hits us in the moment. So we'll turn it on and record in the moment.
Have any of those first takes ever, you think, been the finals?
Oh,
Most of them.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
especially in this season. I'd have to
not
say,
in the past.
when we
That's
first
true.
started doing this thing, it was more like, okay, let's sort of plan it out. But when you do so much, there's sort of certain things that just become second nature. For her now, if all of a sudden we were to swap and put another instrumentalist in her place or in my place, you had to reset, you had to restart, because there's a lot of the things that you learn. It's like marriage, right? We sleep on the same bed, we eat in the same kitchen, we travel all the time together. So there's
Without
certain
speaking,
yes,
you guys sense where you go in tandem together.
It's a synergy,
yes.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's a synergy.
It is our first language that we learned each other with.
Yeah, and we met doing this thing, so it's
playing.
like, yeah.
So I think that helps.
Bro, you're Cupid. You got to ask this question. He is our resident.
Cupid.
If not Bethel, certainly Bethel College's Cupid.
Well, I would
You have
say
the
that
anointing.
Bethel Conservatory of the
matchmaking.
Arts is a dating agency. It is. I'm a director of a
Prime
dating
candidate.
agency.
The
Absolutely.
Bethel Supernatural Dating Agency.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a
Next
massive honor, actually, because especially if you believe in marriage and you believe in the power. God told me one time that he not only he plants seeds on hearts, but he plants seeds in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for those people that understand the power of the love of God,
Mm-hmm.
and that if there's no love, there's no God,
Mm-hmm.
then they understand that you can't really see fully God
Mm-hmm.
until you are in covenant.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no way you're gonna. So that's why people say, "Should I get married?" And I'm like, oh, "Yes, you should." I mean, what kind of question is that? No, I understand.
There might be a few people he's called to singleness, but
Yeah.
most
and
people.
every generation is different, and I get
Thank you,
that.
Paul.
But
Exactly,
I remember when
exactly.
I met you, is it 10 years ago? 9 years ago? 10
Yeah.
years ago?
Yeah.
We were sat having a glass of wine
I remember
in View
that.
202 and
Uh-huh.
you weren't even married then.
Uh-huh.
I don't think you'd even met Allison then. And
Yeah.
I asked you to work on a project with me. We
Yes,
worked
I
on
remember
Christmas
that.
Carol when I was doing it at the Civic.
wow.
Yeah.
And you just came in and you started playing the melody on the piano and then you started singing. I was like, good Lord.
I
So
remember that.
how many instruments do you both actually play?
Well,
I mean, because
I
you're
think
like,
he plays more than me, actually.
when you play,
I do
piano,
play
you
it.
play pretty good.
I would say I'm not violin and viola are the ones I feel
Those are
like
first
professional
cousins.
level.
Yeah.
I play the guitar, the piano, I dabble in the flute, I sing, but I don't feel like I'm
Yeah.
professional level.
okay.
But I do enjoy the instruments.
I mean,
Yeah.
between
He
the two of
actually
you,
plays a
probably
lot
does
more.
it.
Yeah. I mean, I play
Yeah.
the piano.
He plays
I
a
learned
lot
the piano when I was in conservatory because I was doing strings and composition. So in order to be in composition, you had to play the pieces that you wrote on the piano, and so they made you take piano, and so I think I did like 6 or 7 years of piano or something like that, and so I used to be better at it. I haven't practiced for a long time as in the classical sense of developing and building skill, but I love the piano. I love the piano because it's all there, and you're seeing it. It's just all right there. It's like
It's a great visualization.
Yeah.
fascinating to me about the piano. It's like we've gone as human beings, we've gone to great lengths to create machines and technology that facilitates the creation of music. I mean, I don't think we've even for speaking English, we've gone to the lens that we've gone into to create machines and technology that facilitates the expression of that language to the point that we've done in music.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an interesting story with the strings. This is not sure if it's true or if it's a legend, but it's interesting nonetheless.
It is.
that Stradivarius, the
Mhm.
best violins, sort of the most famed, well-famed violin.
Lamborghinis of.
The Lamborghinis of they're more collectors than, but they were made by 1700s. And the Antonio Stradivarius, he was an Italian man. He lived in a plaza. In this plaza, he actually, they said that he was a Protestant at the time, and he might have gotten the design because the design of the instruments out of revelation
Wow.
by the Holy Spirit because it's an instrument that ever since his improvements has not been improved
It's
upon.
perfect.
Mhm.
It's considered
He
the perfect.
he improved certain key aspects of the string instrument
Mhm.
family. That
Guitars
has
have been
never been
improved
changed.
upon so much,
Mhm.
pianos, but the strings family of violins, the basic design of it
Yeah.
has not been improved upon for hundreds of.
Which sounds like revelation.
Sounds like revelation.
Exactly.
So listen, in this episode, we're exploring love, and if Fab's going to neglect his Cupid duties, then I've got to ask, how did the two of you fall in love? What piece were you playing? You said that it happened in the midst of music. Do you remember the moment, Allison?
It was honestly a journey.
A journey.
Yes.
Says every woman, by the way, that I've. For the guys, it was like, "Yep, you."
Yeah.
Right? Was it "Yep, you," Antonio?
I think. Well, here's the thing. I think we both felt very attracted to
Yes.
one another from the beginning.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's
We even have a
difficult.
picture the night we met. So
Yeah.
we
Where
know
was it?
when we met.
We
It
met
was-
at a strings night.
Yeah.
Where?
And we played.
Here-
Was it like a
Right.
single strings
was?
night?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was at Beck's house.
It's actually like the Bethel strings.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And I had heard of a cellist that was in town. And I'm like, I know all string players in Reading. Like, I need to meet this person. And so we
Yeah.
met.
Yeah, we met,
officially.
and I mean, that night, it was great. I mean, she prophesied over me that night, actually.
Okay.
But we had a string circle, you know, and we were playing with,
Yeah.
you know, strings with one another. And I mean, here's the thing, like, you know, it's one thing to be attracted to somebody and another thing to begin to date someone. Right? You know, now afterwards, we've talked about this, like that night, we both felt certainly attracted to
There
one
was
another.
a wow.
There was like
a wow moment.
who is this person?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And but obviously, like, you know, we were at the time, we were sort of in a season of, you know, we didn't want to necessarily date, you know, we were, and so we
I was
for
planning on
almost a
moving for
year,
wedding, so I was like, I don't know how much I'm actually putting.
very shortly about that night, we had a conversation.
Oh.
So DTR kind of thing, and
Already that night.
no, not that night, like
Which-
shortly after, like,
Yeah.
you know, a few weeks after that, and it was, you know, we just got together, and I just felt the need to.
Did
at
you
this
drive
point
the
to-
conversation? Because some men in
Yeah.
this environment need to hear this. So did you kind
Yeah.
of initiate
I sort of
and drive?
felt the
Actually did initiate it,
responsibility
yeah.
to say, hey, like, you know, I just want to let you know, I'm no one pretentious. I don't want to be pretentious or anything here, but I just want to, you know, I just want to let you know that at this point in my life, I'm not looking for dating. I'm in a sort of season of being single and focusing on other things. Just want to put that out there. But I love to cultivate friendship. That's great. But that's where I'm at, and that's as much as I can give in relationships to. Yeah, you know, and it was great. It was a good conversation.
How did you take that?
Yeah, I was gonna
Were
say.
you liking him at the time?
I'd started to like, this guy is really interesting. I was definitely in a place where I had lived.
He is the most interesting person.
I know
around.
he is. I still am discovering things about him. I had lived in England, come back and was starting my university journey. So I was planning on moving from Reading. I had a full ride to go to Davis.
Where were you in England?
I was near Maidenhead.
Okay.
So kind of Oxford, between
Yeah,
like Oxford.
By the way, did you see what she
London.
just did there? She just drove through, like, I had a full ride to Davis, one of the best universities, just in passing, just as a side note.
That was like a dream to go to.
Yeah.
And then I want to get my master's in England and then live in England. That was my goal. So I was pretty like headstrong,
Yeah.
which was great. So I was,
What was
I was
the
not
turn,
sure.
though? Yeah.
Well, not to make a story too long, but I would go back every year and live in England.
Yeah.
And so I was going to go back and live every year there the summers until I actually lived there. So I was doing that. We had known each other at that time, and I booked my tickets. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm.
So you basically
I'm going to
left
continue.
to England. Yeah. She left for England. And
Yeah.
She was gone.
I was gone, and by that point in our relationship,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, actually, there is something here.
Yeah.
And we knew me actually going. By that point, we were far enough in our friendship. They're like, actually, this is going to be make or break it. Like, can we
Okay.
do long distance and stay
Yeah.
connected?
We had a
And-
conversation before you left for England, in which we were like, I know we're friends, but, you know, again, another DTR, right? Like, but
That's defining the relationship by
yeah,
Danny.
defining the relationship.
Just in
that's
case nobody.
Because we had gone enough, like we had known each other long enough. We
We
kept
sort of-
showing up at things. We're like, you're here again, have great conversations.
We had
We're
great
like,
connection. It was so easy.
Yeah.
It felt like
Mm.
it felt so easy. This
Yeah.
is, you know, like really, like, you know, I mean, you know, anyone listen to this thing right now, you know,
It's like a violin and a cello.
yeah,
Exactly.
it felt like
It's a
so
melody.
beautiful.
The thing is, as
Two
well,
melodies
being
becoming a song.
European, our view of dating is very different than here. Like here, it's
What does that
it's-
mean?
I don't know.
Italian.
I mean,
Oh,
I
have
don't-
a lot of thoughts.
I don't know if it's in our culture or what, but I mean, guys just need to strap on a set.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
No,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
serious because listen,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
where are the men?
This is
Yeah.
assuming they don't already have a set. But
Well, yeah, but where are the men? Because there are
Yeah.
so many
I
beautiful
agree.
women
Yes, I
that are single,
Yeah.
and so many, and I'm like,
well,
Yeah.
what is this?
Well, first of all, there's a generational thing that's happening right now with the double click. I call it the double click phenomenon. Like maybe there's another one, or the swipe left,
Yeah.
or whatever the hell's going on that we're doing these days that convinces us that there's another 55,000
Exactly.
options, which is total BS because that's like me
Totally.
believing that I'm also an NFL player, and a
Exactly.
professional golfer. It's like,
Yeah.
listen, get real with yourself. No matter how attractive you think you are,
yeah.
there's probably one human being that will tolerate you for the next 50 years
Exactly.
and find you eternally
Yeah.
fascinating.
yeah.
Like, stop lying to yourself.
But it's like,
true.
I mean, it's true. Like when I
Real.
say we're talking about people,
Yeah.
because like, what do? I'm like, there's just so many girls that are attracted to me. And I, like 50 of them probably won't go out. 50% of them won't go out
Right.
with you.
Yeah.
So then narrow it down.
Yeah.
Okay. And just make a decision.
Yes.
Like, oh, I'm praying about it. And
I actually think it's cowardice.
it's cowardice. And I think it's also the emasculation of men, probably to some
There's so
extent.
many factors.
And guys say, I'm dating Jesus. And I'm like, no, that sounds very, very weird.
Yeah.
Please stop saying that stuff. Anyway, this is not just a
Step up.
step up.
Ask the girl out on the date that's
Step,
sitting in the
Yeah.
string
just
circle.
do it.
Yeah.
Be like
Trust me.
Europeans who'll be like,
Which
Yeah.
he
you
did
know.
really well. He did really well,
thanks,
which
babe.
I was thankful. He led in that a lot.
Thanks, baby.
What did that look like? How did he pursue you? What did he do? What was that? What was there like a moment where you're like, yes, that's the turning, that's the tipping point for me?
I mean, I think leading up to when I was leaving to England, which was kind of definitely England was a defining factor in our relationship
The
of us
distance,
choosing
the
each other.
longing.
Yes. But he did really well at, we communicated and we both did really well at just we're remaining friends. We both play on the same worship team. We're in a lot of the same recordings. We have great conversations, but making sure that it stayed within that and it wasn't meeting needs on the side, which I feel like friendships can. You're actually meeting emotional needs that it doesn't actually drive me to then really pursue you because we're actually getting our needs met right now. And so he did really well at signaling, I feel like in conversations. Like I remember we had a conversation where he's like, actually, I think we need to pay attention to this. Because I was already starting to feel it by then, but I wanted to also, I brought it up, I think, but I really wanted to let you lead in some of that just because you had so communicated to me of like, I will let you know in that. And so I feel like you did really well signaling.
Yeah, thanks, babe.
And bringing up that conversation.
and it was a Spanish accent that must have
I
been
know.
huge.
It's
Exactly.
kind of Antonio Banderas.
Yeah.
thing.
Antonio.
And I just have to say, why the heck the UK? Good Lord. The weather is the spawn of Satan, and it's just
It's so funny because people, when
Oh
I lived
my
there, would be like,
Lord.
you're from California? Like, I'm so jealous. I'm like, I actually love your weather. I understand it can be.
wow.
Human beings love contrast, change, and the
Yeah.
other thing.
Yeah.
I know.
What you can't have
right
sometimes.
here.
Yes.
So listen, we're gonna cliffhang. We're gonna cliffhang part one. We orchestrated music and relationship together. So we're just gonna go for a part two. The story continues. We're gonna pick up and we're gonna continue to explore your creative processes, and then also too, just guys, how you balance life. Because I know a lot of creatives are wondering if I can have a healthy relationship and what it looks like to do that, not just on that first date, but for a lifetime. So guys, thank you so much for listening to this first episode of Storia. Please come back for episode 2 with the Marins.
See you soon.